Chapter 700, Excellent Teamwork. King of the North Ulason's tragic cries rapidly turned into a roar. Following that, a snowstorm engulfed the area outside the cave, reducing the visibility to less than 5 meters. Howling gales swept up dense goose feathers as they covered every inch of space. Meanwhile, an icy blue halo rapidly extended outwards, clinging close to the ground. It left frozen ice everywhere in its wake as it passed. Klein, who had his vision and hearing affected by the blizzard, instantly had the corresponding scene surface in his mind. He hurriedly bent his knees and kicked his heels, jumping high up, allowing the icy blue halo to sweep underneath him. As for Mobbit Zorost, who wasn't adept at combat, he was already too close to the icy blue halo when he noticed it. He didn't have the time to jump up. At that moment, he was hoisted up by his shoulders, as the bottom of his feet had a tempestuous hurricane lift him up into the air. With this combination, he instantly flew up into the sky, avoiding the outcome of being frozen. Mobbit turned his head and, without surprise, saw the deadpan Saidas. This elven songster could only muster up strong winds to glide forward due to the law forbidding flight. Anderson, Edwina, Snowman, and Frunzier reacted accordingly, jumping in time and dodging the attack without succumbing to it. Only Grossel, who had just pulled out his broadsword from the snow, was hit in the legs by the icy blue halo, as he couldn't dodge in time. Layers of ice instantly surged upwards, as Grossel stood on the spot like a frozen corpse. Whoosh! The exaggerated blizzard obscured all the Beyonders' vision, making them lose their vision of the frost dragon. All they could do was passively defend against any attacks. At that moment, Snowman, who hadn't dropped to the ground, spread out his arms once again and said solemnly in ancient Hermes, "God says it's ineffective." The violent blizzard suddenly calmed down significantly. Be it the tempestuous hurricanes or the dense snowflakes, they were weakened or had been cut in half. Saidas vaguely made out a gigantic face with an ugly lizard-like face. The broken arrow was still embedded in its forehead. Ulason had taken the opportunity to close the distance between them. Saidas didn't panic. The strong winds suddenly changed directions, sending Mobbit and her floating backward. Meanwhile, her chilled, pale lips opened as she sang in ancient and abstruse Elvish, "The rocks are destined to be shattered by the waves. The trees are destined to be struck down by the winds. The mountains are destined to crumble by the lightning." As every word in Elvish was rich and filled with meaning, the constructed sentences were extremely succinct. Therefore, the lyrics didn't waste too much of Saidas's time. Furthermore, from the moment the first word was spoken, and from the beginning of the beautiful and forceful rhythm, the winds in the blizzard began to experience changes. The howling sounds of wind turned chaotic as it spread out in every direction. Ulason's massive figure once again appeared before Klein and company's eyes. When Saidas sang the third phrase, disciplinary paladin Frunzier had already pushed out his right palm and profoundly said in ancient Hermes, "Imprison." Instantly, the frost dragon, which was about to rush Saidas and Mobbit, had frozen on the spot. Surrounding it were layers of transparent walls. And as Frunzier said that softly, Edwina, who had just found her footing, made her light blue eyes turn black. Inside them flowed a sticky liquid that seemed to be the manifestation of all the evil in the depths of one's heart. She gently clenched her right palm as Ulason stood up with a roar, instantly ripping apart the effects of imprison. The frost dragon's eerie blue eyes were filled with blankness and pain. It seemed to be still immersed in the emotions of sudden madness and ruthlessness. Even though this was a state it was always in, to have it fully triggered was uncomfortable. Without a doubt, it was a dragon who found it difficult to control its emotions. Seizing the opportunity of Ulason's brief pause, Anderson Hood condensed a burning white spear in his hand. Then, he bent his back and threw it out. Without waiting for the outcome, flames appeared under the strongest hunter's feet, turning the ice into liquid. Sue! The spear accurately struck the frost dragon's half-open mouth, quickly melting the thick armor plates of ice, with the excess force penetrating the upper part of its forehead. Ulason let out another tragic cry as its hind legs stomped backward, sending its body lunging forward. It stayed close to the ground as it rushed towards Anderson with a terrifying speed. The only thing in its eyes was this worm that had dealt significant amounts of damage to it. Schwing! The snow split apart as a deep and wide chasm opened up in the ground. It emanated all the way to where Anderson was as it continued extending. Bang! With its terrifying inertia, the frost dragon slammed into a boulder covered in thick ice, shattering its outer shell and cracking its interior. If Anderson had collided with it, the strongest hunter was bound to turn into meat paste. Even being brushed was likely to lead to his death. However, in a particular spot in the chasm where Anderson was originally standing, there was a dark hole that led straight down. It was just enough for a person to burrow in. Puh! A hand held onto the hole's entrance. Through the exertion of force, the strongest hunter with disheveled hair jumped out. After he threw the burning spear, he didn't dodge in panic. Instead, he directly used his Beyonder powers to melt the snow beneath his feet, and he burned the underlying soil. Silently, he created a hole that wasn't too deep. Following that, he sank himself into it by crouching, perfectly dodging the King of the North's charge. At that moment, a pure beam of light descended and struck Grosel, quickly melting the ice encasing him. Snowman had used an offensive blow to remove the restrictions placed on the giant guardian. With the explosive light of dawn, Grosel raised his broadsword and charged to the frost dragon with wide strides before cleaving down wildly. Bangs, bangs, bang. Grosel was only a meter shorter than Ulison's non-humanoid form. His strength was equally ridiculous. As he clashed repeatedly with Ulison's front claws, occasionally wavering and retreating at times, he quickly recovered by taking a step forward and engaged his opponent. With the giant guardian occupying the frost dragon's attention, the others reacted accordingly with relative composure. Snowman maintained his spread arms as a sun-like halo appeared around him. It quickly spread outwards, warming up all his companions and giving them immense courage. Furthermore, he carefully ensured that it avoided the King of the North. Not far from him, Sayadiz's hair flared up as she drew her bowstring. She shot out arrows that appeared to be formed by wind blades or lightning. Due to the massive target, every single one of her arrows had hit her target. Furthermore, all of the arrows struck the same spot, the frost dragon's shoulder. Mobbit Zorost worked with Grosel, occasionally stealing the thoughts the King of the North had and was about to execute, making it pause briefly. At other times, he would attempt to steal its powers, but in the few times he didn't have any success. With the pitch-black sword, Anderson carefully circled to the frost dragon's flank and attempted to strike a particular spot. Disciplinary Paladin Frunzir brandished his iron-black sword, using Prohibition and Imprison to aid Grosel's brawl with the frost dragon. Without his restraints, even if the giant was a guardian, he would have long been sent flying, suffering from a fatal stomp or the spewing of breath. Klein looked at Edwina and raised his hand to point at himself. Invisibility. He didn't know if she had the ability to mimic this power. If it wasn't possible, he needed to consider using other methods. Edwina didn't ask why, as her light blue and limpid eyes immediately reflected Jayaman Sparrow's body, which lost its color and turned transparent. Following that, Klein's figure became faint and vanished. After confirming his condition, Klein quickly ran towards the intense clash between the giant and the dragon. With a roll, he arrived by the King of the North's left foot. Then, as he focused on dodging Ulison's feet while it did battle, he emanated his spirituality to control the illusory black threads with the spirit body threads vision he had long activated. Right on the heels of that, he would roll or leap around, in search of space beneath or around the frost dragon. Su su su. Silver lightning arrows and pure azure wind blades landed in a small region, shattering the armor plates of ice, tearing apart the resilient skin. Soon, the frost dragon's right shoulder was a swath of light blue. The corresponding claws motions also appeared to slow down indiscernibly. Disciplinary Paladin Frunzir acutely noticed this point. As he dodged the icy blue breath, he pointed in that direction and declared in ancient Hermes, "Death." With a bursting sound, the blue blood flowing from Ulison's right shoulder instantly dried up. and the tear allowed its translucent bones to be seen. At that moment, Edwina used a palm-sized brass mirror and reflected parts of Ulissen's body in it. She reached out her right hand and grabbed at the mirror's surface, pinching the reflection within. Then, she forcefully pulled outwards. Ulissen's wound instantly worsened. It kept spreading as though it was about to lose one of its front claws. It let out a tragic cry as it suddenly raised its body, standing on its hind legs. Light blue light that was almost white surged out of the dragon. In a 100-meter range, the temperature plummeted, followed by a fearsome force. Suddenly, all the Beyonders were sealed in ice. Their bodies became extremely cold as they turned very stiff. They couldn't help but tremble. Cyatas, Mobbit, Edwina, Klein, Grossel, Anderson, and Frunzier all shared similar symptoms. The only one who barely maintained his mobility was the ascetic, Snowman, thanks to withstanding the training of being frozen countless times. He maintained his spread arms, half-closed his eyes, and solemnly said, "God loves everyone." Sunlight tore through the wind and snow, as the warmth began to melt the feeling of being frozen. Bang! Ulissen sent Grossel flying with a claw, severely injuring the giant guardian by leaving a depression in his chest. It temporarily ignored the rest as it targeted Snowman, Blitz rushing him. Snowman has no one protecting him. It's about to move beyond a 5-meter radius. Klein watched this scene, feeling somewhat numb. He had the urge of running into the cave to pray to himself before using the Sea God Scepter above the gray fog to respond. At that moment, a scarlet fireball appeared beside the ascetic before the frost dragon arrived. Then, it exploded without any reservations, sending him flying. It was from the strongest hunter, Anderson. At that moment, Edwina had produced a fireball in her hand and threw it at Ulissen's back, but she failed to hit it. She was creating a passageway for Klein to phase over with the fire. She had learned from Danitz of this ability Jamin Sparrow had.